Okay, Misha, let's get to going.
Yeah, well, today we'll also have our new participant, well, very old participant, Mr. Noodles, who's a Reiki master, and he's going to be participating in today's activities somewhat, as we will get to when I'm doing the mind-body portion. Okay, so you know the drill, small group today, so if you're rather unmute, raise your hand and we'll make sure we'll unmute you and have you ask the questions. COVID-wise, I have two quick updates. So one, we haven't talked about new variants for quite some time, and there hasn't been a lot of reports except the one that's probably worth paying attention to, this new variant called JN1, which is it's still a sublineage of Omicron, seemingly even more infectious and not necessarily, so more contagious, but not necessarily more severe. It seems to be heading towards more cold-like symptoms rather than respiratory symptoms. In fact, all of the Omicron subvariants that I think of any real concern seem to be doing that. They seem to be becoming less respiratory and more what you would describe as a common cold. And then some of them are also beginning to have, not this one, but the other ones starting to have, again, a bit more GI symptoms. So if you track the data, that seems to be also another growing symptom. So that's one. Why JN is sort of important? Well, because it's the fastest growing in Europe. At this point, it counted for 80 plus new cases in England. So that usually means that it's going to come here. Whether that's going to become a predominant strain during this winter, we'll have to see. But I think that's what I would probably anticipate. So that's news number one. Second, it's not clear why, but we're seeing a very dramatic spike in hospitalizations for COVID. It's over a 30% increase in just last couple of weeks. It's heading towards what we've had a year before, despite the fact that if you kind of look around you, you're not really seeing a lot of cases compared to, say, 21-22 season, comparable season last year. Why that's happening, nobody fully understands, but most of these hospitalizations are among 65 plus. And the prediction or sort of the suggestion that this is particularly relates to the fact that basically the new variant new Omicron subvariant seems to be more contagious. That doesn't necessarily explain why we're seeing more hospitalization, because with a higher contagion or higher chance of infection, generally speaking, we're seeing less virulent strains. So I don't fully understand this. I'm also kind of wondering if this is simply a reporting problem. It may be that simply the rates are increasing due to just a natural winter variation, as you would expect, but the reporting has been somehow changed from some weeks before. So we have to see more trend before we can say that this is something really concerning, because who knows what's going to happen in a couple of weeks. And today, most of what we're going to cover is sort of talking about the holidays. So one of the reasons I'm kind of bringing all this up is, of course, the holidays are coming. A lot of you are going to be traveling potentially somewhere, meeting with friends, family. So I think this is the one part of the discussion, is sort of how do we survive through this. Viktoriya is going to give us a whole talk on this, and then I expect you guys are going to have questions about it. So I think what I want to do is, if anybody have questions now, go for it. Another option, if there is not a lot of questions, for Viktoriya just to start right away. And then before we do the mindfulness, do the questions, because sort of like taking into account her talk and also kind of preparing so you can think a bit more what kind of questions you have. But my change on my recommendations on masking hasn't changed. If you're traveling in an enclosed environment like bus, train, or plane, definitely wear the mask. When you get to a point of your destination where things are a bit more open, or it's just your family, presumably you kind of make sure that nobody's sick, and ideally everybody would get tested before getting together, but I probably wouldn't worry about masking in the small groups. So that's that. And oh yeah, and we're seeing a lot of the, that's why I couldn't find the data on this, but I see a lot of people tell me, oh no, I didn't have a COVID because the tests were negative. And then like 2, 3, 4 days into the illness, they do another test and it finally comes back positive. So that is true that the most newest variants seem to be escaping testing better and better. So I predict that that's also going to create another concern. So yeah, my parents, thanks for questions. My parents have sort of finally gotten over it. They tested negative, and they have not been having as many symptoms, although mom seemed to have some fatigue that's slowly resolving, and father seems to be doing well, although mom say that he's cognitively a bit off, just not his usual self. So how long that will last, I don't know. But hopefully they'll come around Christmas time, so that I can see this for myself. So all right, well, I don't see any other questions. I'm going to post the information on JN1 in the chat, and I'll yield the floor to Viktoriya. And then, as I said, let's do questions a bit after.
Perfect. Happy Friday, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces and new. So my job today is maybe help all of us to get emotionally ready for a busy holiday season. There's a lot of things going on, I'm sure, for everyone personally and in the world that impacts us. It's also, you know, we're in winter time. It's a time where we're supposed to slow down and reflect, right? And holidays very often do not allow that. So before we dive into, you know, what can we do to help us to cope, we want to make sure we ask you some questions about what's the most challenging for you during this holiday season. And we have some options. I see people started answering. So let's give it a little bit more time. And then once we have results, we can see what, you know, what would be relevant for us to target. I see a lot of answers regarding self-care, which I think is expected. Balancing personal and work responsibility seem to be also pretty prevalent. Dealing with grief and loss, and that's especially hard time. Setting boundaries, financial stress. So I mean, pretty much all the questions that we have seem to be having a fair number of responses. So it looks like our number one is really finding that time for self-care. And then our number two is dealing with grief and loss and balancing personal and work responsibilities. So we're gonna, Janet, we have most of the people answering. I think we have a few more minutes before the poll closes. But as you are reflecting on those things that are challenging for you, today I would like to approach them through the lens of setting boundaries. Though I see this is maybe not the most popular answer, this is perhaps an answer that helps to address some other ones. Because you cannot really find that time for self-care, right? You cannot really balance personal and work responsibilities if you don't create some space, right? And same for dealing with grief and loss. You do have that inner space or inward focus to process it. All right, so I'm going to close the poll right now and share results with everybody. You guys see that, you know, your responses here. So I'm going to start with saying that at least what I find true for me personally, that creating that space for yourself and balancing act of, okay, well, I have so many responsibilities, how do I find that time, is often, you know, rooted in giving yourself permission to put yourself at the center and focus of your attention, not the others. Because the truth is you are that instrument of care and healing and, you know, joy and comfort for a lot of people in your circles, I'm sure, right? So if you fall apart, that's not going to help anybody, right? And with that, I want us to encourage to look at how we are setting boundaries and where perhaps we can learn to trust ourselves to do it right and to do it better. Let me share my screen. Give me a second here. My computer is feeling it's Friday, so it's a little slow. So I want to I like quotes. Janet note, I want to start with the quote, and this is from Adeline Birch. Boundaries protect the things that are of value to you. They keep you in alignment with what you have decided you want in life. That means the key to good boundaries is knowing what you want. I want you to kind of reflect on it a little bit, and please throughout the talk, post things in the chat. You know, if you have anything you want to reflect on or a question, I will get to it hopefully as we go. But I like that word alignment, right? And I also like the center of the quote around really what you want in life, right? Because that drives the rest of it. But very often we are kind of a little afraid to set that boundary line in a wrong way, right? We afraid that it will come across perhaps not as you intended, or people may respond to it in a negative way or something else. So again, setting your limits, and this is probably the verbiage I would use, is often about trusting yourself to do it and to do it right. And I like this picture because, I mean, that woman is very often me, like in the middle of the chaos of holidays. So if you're talking about boundaries, we kind of talk about different types of things, and this kind of wheel of boundaries shows you what they might mean for you, right? It may be boundary of time, how much time you spent with someone or doing something. Yeah, and time is typically a big concern, and that came up in your poll, you know, finding that time, right? Or it could be mental. This is the freedom to have your own thoughts, values, opinions, and express them. You know, without fear of being judged or perhaps alienated or people contradicting you. Emotional, how emotionally available you want to be to others, and we all do want to be emotionally available to people we love and care for, but again, just coming from a perspective that you're one person and you do need to balance things out, you might want to draw some lines there. And what I like about this wheel, it gives you some verbiage here, right? For example, as much as I want to support you right now, I do not have the emotional capacity, right? Or I respect your perspective, although I do not agree. So it gives you some ways to express what, you know, that limit setting intention in a language that might resonate with you, or you may find your own, right? So those boundaries can also be financial, you know, because financial stress is also, well, like a pretty big one, especially during the time of holidays, especially in our economy. So how do I balance those, you know, material or financial things that are coming my way? It could be also internal, and that's about your self-regulation and energy expenditure, regarding social commitments, right? And again, from a perspective of conserving energy during the season, when everyone's supposed to slow down, at least nature slows down during this season. So we also wired in the same way. Our body, our physiology, right? Our emotions, they're more inward kind of an energy conservation oriented. Physical, again, this is your physical space, this is your privacy, you know, this is, and maybe instead of being too social, you want to create some space where you can be with yourself or your pet, or, you know, or be in nature, or have just quiet time where it's uninterrupted. So those are just some fruitful thoughts where the boundary line could be. Now we're going to talk about how that boundary line may potentially look, because we all have different ways that we approach it. And this kind of a breakdown of kinds of personal boundaries I really like, because it's really like a gate. You know, some people have a wall. They like, no one comes in and nothing comes out. You know, you kind of keep yourself very protected because perhaps you had an experience where your boundaries were violated, and you know, you've really, your space has been you know, compromised. So you want to keep it strong. But what it does, it really keeps others away. It keeps you isolated. So when you need, you do not ask for help. Right. And it may seem that you're very detached if other people are trying to engage with you. So, I mean, yes, you protect yourself, but then at the same time, you'll also isolate yourself and create an impression of not being approachable. And it gets lonely behind that wall very often. And if anyone here in this group kind of identify with it or want to reflect on it, please use the chat to share. This is this is a very safe space, and you know, what shared in here stays in here. So I hope people feel comfortable expressing some of their thoughts. And then another kind of boundaries, we call them porous. So it's kind of like there are windows in your gate and they are open. There is no kind of actual door that protects it. So things kind of get out. You're very open in those windows, and that may be reflecting you really struggling to say no, you overcommitting yourself, you being easily influenced by other people, feel responsible to take on you know, things that other people give you, even though they are not necessarily your responsibility, right? Or you blame yourself for not fulfilling those obligations, as like happiness of other people depend upon you. So, and that's also, you know, a lot of it might be connected with the fear of rejection, right? So you might, if that's a type of a personality and interaction you have, you might want to think about, okay, well, yes, I want to be open to people. I want to communicate that I care, but I also want to have some sort of a protection for my own space. And for that, you might want to build some sort of a gate system. And that's what the healthy boundary is. So you have a gate that you can open and close when needed, right? That allows you to say no without feeling guilty. That allows you to value yourself, your opinions, your preferences, appreciate yourself for who you are, right? And communicate your wants and needs. And that's what that quote was about, right? It's knowing what you want, knowing what you need, and be open about it. And in how you express it, you will be able, hopefully, not to compromise your identity, not to compromise your value system, and choose really wisely what you need and what you don't. So that's something that I find very helpful for myself, and I hope you find this helpful as you are building up your gates of boundaries. Now, as we started the conversation, we started with, you know, often boundaries is about trusting yourself. And I often find that fear of setting boundaries is connected that with the belief that boundaries is only about saying no, right? And that's not quite right, because to me, it's an opportunity to say yes. It's an opportunity to say yes to the things that you need and like, and giving the same opportunity to those people around you if they choose to hear what you're trying to communicate, right? So to me, it's about opportunity. It's also about communication. It's about establishing this healthy limits to balance things out, and also using the I language when you communicate it, because it's important to own that space. It's important to own your wants and needs. I really like this quote here, and that's like a random social media stuff, but if someone communicates their boundaries to you, that is them trying to keep you in their life, in their circles, not to push you away. I think we forget about it. We're so afraid that people will reject us when we say no, that we forget that we are really allowing this an opportunity for better communication and better understanding of each other's needs and wants, right? So I feel that that's something that I often forget. And I need to remind myself that this is about opportunity to say yes to so many more things that I want to do for myself and other people. And balanced, happy me means me wanting to spend more energy, having that energy at the end, and bringing that joy to people that I care about. So as we are moving through some of the strategies, I want to give you some examples of a language you might use when you set the boundaries. And again, there in front of you, you may choose to phrase it exactly like that. You may choose to phrase it in some other ways. But I kind of like some of them and how they frame things. They all start with positive words. If you notice, they start with words like I appreciate, right? Or I understand, I respect. So they build on positive first, and they go then to the point where perhaps tension or disagreement is, and try to articulate it in a way that would be respectful yet firm, right? I appreciate your concern, but this is my decision, right? I understand you're frustrated, but I don't want to engage in this argument right now. It's really about protecting your space. And again, the opportunity to say yes to things you need and like in your life. Now, some other things that I find helpful is, we talked about giving yourself permission to actually engage in limit setting behaviors. I also want to point out self-compassion. I really think it's very important, because when we talk about boundary setting, it's something that I feel we really need to exercise, because none of us is going to do it perfectly. And, there's a beauty in us being imperfect human beings. But we need to give ourselves that in order to keep on trying and keep on, putting that line out so people know what you need and want. And I want to give you, and I know I've shared this before, but this is maybe a bit of a refresher for those that saw it, and maybe new information for those that didn't. This is the self-awareness and self-compassion algorithm. It was developed by a psychologist, Tara Brach, and the abbreviation here is RAIN. So it consists of 4 steps: recognize, assess, investigate, and nurture. So when we approach in any situation that perhaps is challenging, calls for setting boundary, we want to first kind of recognize what the situation produces in us, right? What's happening in our body, what's happening in our emotional world, what are some of the thoughts that come in mind. So it's almost like you're doing a body scan, emotional scan, and kind of pinpointing the spots that need attention. And then you need to decide, you need to assess, am I saying yes or no to this? Like, am I going to address this situation or am I going to let it go? Because to me, timing and setting boundaries and the right timing and the right circumstances, they do matter, right? For a success of your endeavor. So am I saying, yes, am I going to proceed with setting this line right now? Maybe this is not a good time. Maybe I want to wait for a better time. So just giving it really simply 15 seconds to make that decision and observe how you respond. And then depending on your response, you may want to evaluate a little bit further. What is it that you're longing for? You know, when I'm saying yes or no to it, am I longing for attention? Am I longing for acceptance? Am I longing for something, validation, or something else, right? What is the function of this experience for me? Where is it leading me? Where is the opportunity perhaps for growth, for that yes I'm trying to say to other things? And then the last step is really to think about what is it that I can do that would be kind and nurturing for myself. And it could be, okay, well, I've tried, I set that line. Maybe it went well, maybe it didn't, but regardless of the outcome, I want to maybe do something good for myself, whether it's your favorite piece of chocolate or, you know, maybe walk with your dog or playing with your kids or grandkids, whatever that is that gives you joy. Doing it for yourself to reinforce that experience is very, very important. So I hope that that framework might be helpful to some of you. And then I want to address another big part of that boundary setting piece. And you, majority of you really talked about the need for self-care. So self-care is something that to me is at the kind of the base of building up other things we want to do with our life, right? It's not selfish, it's necessary. And we need to make that commitment to allocate intentional time and prioritize that self-care, even if it's a few minutes in the day. And from this graph, you see there are so many different types of self-care. Could be physical, I mean, having a nutritious meal, or maybe doing some sort of a physical activity, getting some good rest. It could be mental, where you maybe need some positive self-talk or engage in meditation or mindfulness. Could be emotional, things like gratitude, journaling. It could be spiritual, you know, getting in touch with your higher power, maybe being in the nature, getting in touch with it in any way that makes sense to you, and etc. Like so many different things that you can do, but you need to pick at least one a day to start with and say, okay, I'm going to allocate this time, or I'm going to make the best out of like 5 minutes I have walking between my, you know, office and my car, to maybe notice that sky is blue, sun is shining, birds are chirping, and, you know, it's good enough for now. That's something that gives me that positive energy. Or it might be a little bit more elaborate if you have more time. Maybe, you know, I just want to sit down and watch my favorite movie with my family. And that's going to be my type of self-care. That's going to be my movie night tonight. So whatever that is, the intention and consistency definitely matters. And again, it says here, repeat daily, increase the dose. And I'm a big believer that we do of my life, or this particular day, or this particular time frame. But in order for it to work, we do need intentionally to put it as a priority. And again, just to maybe flip this idea in a little different way, there are some things here that may help you to do it. And if you want to put in the chat which one seemed to resonate with you better, please share. I love pet therapy. I mean, I do have pets just like Misha. I like interacting with them, so they seem to be my go-to. A lot of times, creating to-do lists and prioritizing and delegating things. That's something that I also try to do, especially during this holiday season where there are so many demands. Good sleep, wonderful. That's kind of paramount things, because the good night of sleep can make a huge difference in a way that you feeling about yourself, about the world, your level of energy. Getting outside and walking my dogs, perfect. I love that. So, I mean, you all have those things that feel you. So focusing on things that feel you instead of things that drain you. Because, I mean, things that drain you, they're not going away. They're going to be there. They're going to, they're unavoidable in life. But then balancing it out with things that feel you help you to keep that balance. Now, again, speaking about time, since we found out how we don't have it, this is literally a list of like 1 minute mindfulness exercises you can do to help yourself self-regulate, help yourself regain that balance, shift from like being on high alert and maybe to more of a safe and connected state. Then could be simply yawning and stretching, or, giving yourself or someone else a mindful hug. That's a great exchange of energy. Mindful eating. I know Dr. Frame has her famous eating the grape exercise, where you eat 1 grape for like a minute and really savor it. That could be a good one. I mean, pick the one that seem like something you want to try, seem like a good fit, and see if it does anything. Cloud watching, I like that. Me and my kids play this game. We look at the cloud and the shapes they take, and we guess, we all say, oh, it looks like a dragon, it looks like a dog. So that one is a, fun one. So some ideas for you. And then what if you try and it doesn't seem to work? And, very often it happens. Like, you really have great intention, you're trying, and it's just not producing the result that you want, and you're feeling so much behind. And I want you to take this as an opportunity for reflection, right? What are some feelings around it? What are some things that perhaps are surfacing that I didn't even think existed in me? It could be sense of failure, shame, guilt, powerlessness, loss of control. So it could be things that were buried underneath for a long time. And then recognize that you have a choice, like, despite of those feelings, despite of perhaps a sense that I've tried it and didn't happen, you have a choice to give yourself permission to try again, right? Of course, every choice comes with a price, emotionally, physically, financially sometimes, but you need to determine whether or not you can afford trying again. Okay, well, I've tried, and that person that I've tried to set boundaries with kind of rejects me. Okay, well, is this something that I am willing to work with, or this is too huge of a loss for me that I rather not do it again? So that comes to that question, can I afford it with this specific person, or this specific circumstance, or within this specific time? And again, your timing may not be the best timing, right? Your circumstances may not be the best circumstances. But if you try it again, maybe later, the different time, different circumstances, they may work, right? And then is there an opportunity gain in the loss that you had experienced? So some questions to kind of ask yourself. And I saw a question in the chat. You definitely going to have a copy of the slides, so don't worry about that. I know I'm a type of a person that would take pictures of everything that I see presented, but you don't have to because you'll have a copy. And then again, reward yourself for trying. To me, the honest effort is what matters. So I think you need to try and try again. And then you need to positively reinforce it with something, again, that you'll like. That kindness, that self-compassion may go a really long way. So I know we're running out of time. So I just want to sum it up. Those are I have the 7 tips for setting your boundaries, right? So I suggest you start your day with the limit setting intention, okay? Know from the start what you're capable of taking on and what you need to maybe delegate or table for now. Acknowledge what you gain by setting boundaries. This is that opportunity to say yes to things that you like and want. Define your priorities. This is about your needs, right? Communicate directly, clearly, and often, because boundaries is about reinforcement. If you said it one time and you perhaps weren't feeling like you were not heard, you need to repeat it again. I worked long enough in rehabilitation business to know that repetition is a key to successful outcome. It's true for pretty much anything we do in life. Pay attention to your needs. That's that, self-check periodically. What am I really feeling in my body in response to it? How my emotions? How is my, thought process? So if you are feeling that you've reached that top where, if you take on more, it's too much, then your body's going to let you know. So you got to listen and you got to pause, notice what's happening, and choose what to do to perhaps offload your plate. Start with small adjustments. You don't need to start with anything big. In fact, if you start with something small and you are successful, that gives you more motivation to try something a little bit more complex in boundary setting. And then practice self-compassion. We talked a lot about it. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if people have any questions or reflections. I know I took a lot of time, so I want to make sure Misha has it.
There's a question about the copies of the slides. Yeah, those will be included in recording. So remember, everything is recorded. I don't know if, Viktoriya, do you want to make a copy of the slides available?
Yeah, I'm going to I always send my slides to Janet, so she'll have a copy and she can share it with the rest of the group.
Okay, very good.
All right.
Well, yeah, I think it's okay if we spend a couple of minutes on questions. We can do a practice a little bit shorter today. It also kind of a nice topic anyway within the scope of mind, body, and all of the things Viktoriya been covering today are very, very good for us overall. So post your questions in the chat, or if you really rather speak up, just raise your hand and we'll make sure we'll unmute you and give you a voice. And let's do maybe up to 3 questions so that we have 15 minutes or so for the practice.
Well, people have been pretty active with the chat as I was talking. So
I do include the questions on COVID if anybody had, because we cut that short. So in case you're holding questions there, then by all means.
And I really love how people reflected about things that they do. I really like the one from Linda. You said free time from technology. Oh, I love this one, technology detox. I really feel we all need, because it can overload your system pretty fast. So that's a very good point. Thank you for sharing that, Linda, as well as, practicing gratitude and spending time in nature.
I think one thing I want to point out, we tend to think that spending time in nature is essential during pleasant weather. I'm going to challenge you on that. Actually, I think it's quite the reverse. It's very easy to spend time, pleasant time in nature when the weather is beautiful. But in some way, it's actually much more important to spend time in nature when weather is really horrible, because we do need to be aware of all possible fluctuations. And more importantly, we need to understand that we're part of them. You know, that we belong to, no matter what the temperature outside, even if it means it's a bit more challenging to put extra layers and maybe even put mask on if you're really afraid of a cold air. So, but it is sort of important to experience every possible weather and season and be outside in elements. So
That's a great point.
it's a great comment about the dogs, because they won't let you be in home and say, oh my God, it's raining, I'm not going anywhere, because they're kind of have to go. So.
Right. And to that also, like going back to that cyclical nature of us as creatures, you know, we do have the circadian rhythms that we are wired by. Our environment has the rhythms. So by doing what Misha suggested, you're getting in touch with some of the sides of nature that are also part of you, because we also have, like, emotionally, we have good weather days and we have bad weather days, right? And we have days, you know, we have days where we are seem to be more energetic, and days where, you know, my body hurts all over and I'm feeling, I don't know, magnetic, you know, fields affecting me, or barometric pressure is affecting me. So it's good to be attuned to those things, and again, listening to your body. I see a question from CJ about, you know, pleasing people and how do I put myself first without guilt? That's an excellent question, and it might really take some more of the one-on-one work to uncover what that guilt is about. But some of the questions for reflection that I had in one of my slides about this kind of gain and loss might be helpful for you to perhaps shift your paradigm, right? So I'm doing that because I want to be nice to everyone. Okay, being nice to everyone takes a lot of energy. I mean, I am a psychotherapist. I am nice to everyone 24/7. It's a very difficult work. So I can tell you there are very mean and unpleasant sides of me that I need to release in order to continue being nice to everyone. Or I need to have my own mental health day where I shut down and nothing comes through. I need to pull that wall. There are no pores in that wall because I need that to protect my space. So you need to kind of start shifting that paradigm from, okay, I want to give to everyone because I want everybody to like me, to being likable or being nice takes energy. How do I create a space for that energy to be produced in me, right? And then it brings yourself to you is kind of number one focus and number one priority, because everything else cannot happen if you are off balance, if you are not happy, right? If you don't have that energy. So maybe reshifting that paradigm might help you. But again, there might be some other things that are underneath that guilt that you may explore in one-on-one work with someone, you know, who can be your soundboard. And could be a therapist, could be a trusted friend, could be, you know, your spouse, could be someone that knows you. But that's important to have people in our lives that can give us that unbiased, more or less unbiased look. Any other?
Right. Well, I think let's just in the interest of time, because we have about
Yeah.
So you know, if you have more direct questions, maybe put them in the chat. We'll see if we have kind of a couple of minutes at the end, but I do want us to do a little bit of a practice. Actually, Linda puts a really good point in there, and that's actually part of what I was, this perfect transition to my practice. So the point of the practice is, what I'd like it to do is, we all know things that tend to comfort us, right? And I'm actually talking about the particular objects. So they can be mental objects if you prefer, or they can be physical objects. That's why this guy is right here on my lap right now. I yanked him off the window where he was staring at the street, and I took him. So you could go ahead and take a minute to find the object, or maybe think about the object and kind of put that into your mental space. I don't think it really matters whether you think about the object or you actually literally hold the object. Could be your pet, it could be a plant, it could be your favorite stone, something from your altar, or just something that gives you a comfort, particularly something that gives you a comfort that you know when things are dark outside, when it's raining, when the elements are kind of difficult, that, you know, we have this tendency, as Linda puts it, to slow down, to listen, to kind of, at the lack of better, that's right. So there's another creature right there. So so we tend to sort of, I wouldn't say shrink our attention, but we tend to cocoon us. I think that's a good word. We tend to cocoon us into this kind of a space of comfort, space of warmth, you know, space of kind of, you know, just allow to understand that this is the time of the year when things have a natural pace of slow. Okay. And yeah, so as Linda points out, sometimes when we get into that space of slow, we start realizing that there are some aspects of us that other people are going to perceive a little different. So my invitation is, get comfortable, take your object or hold it, or if the object runs away, it's perfectly fine. Animals generally don't tend to sit on the way we want them for too long. They're just going to do their thing, which is perfectly fine. But I invite you to, you can lay down, you can turn off your screen if you prefer. You can just make yourself comfortable. So this doesn't require straight, rigid back. It doesn't require to breathe in any other specific way. We're just going to tune internally into this kind of a sensation of our personal cocoon, kind of our protected personal space. Whether that particular object that you're associating with is the center of that, or it's just an element of that. Like my dogs always, if I'm around alone, they're always going to get around me, and they kind of just not necessarily touch me, but they create this ambience of my space. They pay attention to what I'm doing, and if I'm watching a movie, or if I'm just laying down or working in a kind of a enclosed, protected space, they're going to be there. So think of what makes your space this way, what makes it protected, what makes it comfortable. And now begin to, as you settle into this awareness, begin to concentrate on the breath. Begin to slow the breath a little bit down. And become aware as if you yourself feeling how everything is a little slower right now. You know, the plants are in a partial hibernation due to the winter. Some animals going into, like bears, going into sleep in the winter. Birds left to the warmer climate. There are often less noise around us, less natural noise. If you were to be in the forest right now, in the middle of the winter, you notice that it's generally a bit quieter. And so keep your breath very paced, very slow, very quiet. It's not forced, it's not very deep. And become aware of any parts of you that are asking for a special protection, special attention. And see if that surrounded environment that you created, this cocoon, can accommodate for special attention to this area. See if you can, maybe if it's an area of tension or pain, see if you can release it. And this is your time to simply hold this space. Actually, the best term for what we're doing is contraction. So we are contracting in the winter to make time and space to prepare for the expansion in the spring, when our natural tendency of the nature around us is to grow, to expand. But right now we're in this contracted space of holding on to the things that are dear, things that are important, things that give us simple pleasures and simple comforts. It's actually pretty cool. The Noodles, my dog, is actually sleeping. He's snoring on my hands. I don't know if you can hear him. So, you know, if he can relax this quickly to the point of going into the complete, like his whole body is melted into my hands, into my legs, sort of like this kind of almost like a heavy blanket. There's even a therapy when the weighted blanket puts on top of you, on top of us, and that weight helps our nervous system. So in essence, that's what we're doing. We're creating our own space. So just enjoy it. Stay with the breath. You don't have to do anything here. You don't have to pay attention to anything. And this one, just as quickly as he fell asleep, he woke up and he just left. He just scooched out to the side where he's more comfortable. So this is animals have this amazing awareness of what they need. Same with us. So keep an eye on, what do you need? What is your body asking? What is it telling you? What's your best adjustment that should be done to feel a little better, a little safer, a little cozier, a little warmer, whatever it is. Or maybe it's a little cooler. If you like, you can literally just put the object away so that we kind of begin to gradually come back, but still for now, stay with your breath. Keep your eyes closed for just a couple more breaths. And start forming answer to the question of, what supports me right now in this beginning of the winter? going into the holidays? What are the internal things that I would like to hold during the holidays, that I would like to have in my mental and physical space that are helping me to go through the cold part of the year better? What helps me with my state of contraction? Let's spend a couple breaths here. Begin to kind of maybe wiggle your toes, move your shoulders a little bit, just kind of get ready to come back. Slowly open your eyes. Absorb the light that's coming from the environment into your space. Just take if you have to, we're running out of time, but if you have to, you may want to take a note and pad and just write down what are the things that came to you. Maybe there's some pointers that particularly insightful that you want to keep remembering of. And you can always come back to this space of protection, cocoon, contraction, space of warmth. I see some of you nicely cuddled in different ways, and that's what we're talking about. Those are the self-care things around the holidays that I hope you enjoy even more, because I think those are the things that we sometimes neglect, or I'm talking about myself for sure. Sometimes this kind of slow, protected space being created is so critical. So thank you, everybody. Janet, thanks so much. Such a perfect timing. So for next week, we have Eliza Scharf. She's been with us multiple times. She's the psychotherapist, family dynamic therapist, non-dual Kabbalistic healer. That's fascinating. And Dr. Yeager, who's my longtime friend and on the Sufi path, and she's a clinical professor at University of Colorado, retired, and so I'm sure she'll be doing a practice with us. So see everybody. Also, as a reminder, last 2 weeks, remember that Fridays are falling on the holidays pretty much. So we are, I'm guessing next week is the last of the year, correct?
Correct.
So, and then we'll see you all in January after that. Don't stay warm. That's the message. Stay warm, but don't stay warm. See the dualism. Don't be afraid of going out and explore the nature at its coldness, so to speak. And then when you come back, and then you can cocoon again. But going back and forth like this, I think that's the message of today's. Exactly. Thanks, Monica. Balance. Right. It's balance, not just work balance, but it's a balance in nature. The balance between being enclosed and then being open and having a full experience. Bye, everybody. Mostly stay warm. Sometimes stay